Hello, we are live on tape from the 53rd Annual California International Book Fair in Pasadena, California. Today is Sunday, February 8th, 2020. My name is Taylor Bowie, and I'm here with the newly elected president of the Antiquarian Booksellers Association of America, Mr. Brad Johnson of Covina, California. And I should add that today is the exact day that Brad was inaugurated as our new president. So first, congratulations on that.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a great honor.
I have known Brad for a very long time. He and his wife, Jen, own and operate two connected businesses at this point. The Bookshop in Covina, California, which is a long-running open retail shop. But they also have Johnson's Rare, what is the exact name?
Johnson Rare Books and Archives.
Rare Books and Archives. So now that we've got that straight, I'll say thank you, Brad, for sitting down for this pleasant grilling. So what all of us interviewers usually start out with is a little bit about your background, where you first popped onto the scene on this globe of ours, and your childhood, your education, and then how whatever route that took for you to get into the book trade. So.
Okay. Well, I was born in Covina, California, at the hospital, which is about a block away from where the shop is today. My Covina roots run deep. My grandfather was the chief of staff at the hospital there, and he was also the OBGYN in town, and then delivered 2/3 of the babies born in Covina for a period of a couple decades.
Was he Dr. Johnson?
No, that was my mom's sister. He was Dr. Jackson.
Dr. Jackson.
Jackson and Johnson. Very white bread.
I like it.
But yes, born and raised in Covina. Actually, born in Covina, raised in West Covina, not to be confused with Covina.
I sometimes confuse the two myself.
My father was a forensic chemist with the Los Angeles Police Department, and he ran the crime lab. And
Wow.
Subsequently, after he was fully vested with the Los Angeles Police Department, he took a similar position with the San Bernardino County Sheriffs and developed their forensics program.
Wow.
My mom had a big background in science. But she went the teaching track, and she got her teaching credential, and she taught elementary school.
Elementary school science?
No, just general.
Just general elementary?
She taught at Christ Lutheran Day School in West Covina. She was my 5th grade teacher, which was a challenge.
I bet.
You raise your hand and you don't know whether to say Mrs. Johnson or Mom, and so I was the eldest of 3 boys, and then subsequent to that, I had a baby sister come along 10 years after that. My brothers and I are pretty close in age. So I attended Lutheran Day School, then went on to high school, and while I was in high school, a sophomore, there was a notice in our high school bulletin for an apprentice bookseller.
Now, what year was that?
This would be 1993.
And you were how old?
15.
Okay.
Yeah. And it was for the local used bookstore in town, the Bookshop, a store where I had shopped many times. And right after school, I took the bus up and got an application. Wow. I submitted a handwritten application.
No.
Roger had not just the standard application form, but he also had a series of essay questions as well.
That doesn't surprise me. So before we go any farther, tell us a little bit about this person who mentored you and hired you, Roger Gozdecki.
Roger was a remarkable guy, a really committed, dedicated, talented bookman.
Yes, he was.
He attended Whittier College, and he took a job while he was there with the store in Whittier, which was owned by Charles Jimenez.
Oh, yes.
And Chuck Jimenez. And Chuck had recently opened another store in Covina. He was branching out. And so Roger became the manager of the Covina store, which opened in 1981. And he found his calling there among those stacks of books.
Clearly.
And he purchased the shop from Chuck, I want to say in the mid to late 80s, 86, 87, something like that.
That's when I first met him.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and yeah, he was he taught me the fundamentals of the trade, everything from shelving books in the strike zone, to get the highest visibility, to the cataloging books. And boy, did I suffer under the red ink of that cross pen.
I bet.
He hand corrected all of our catalog sheets. Of course, I started in the analog era. We had with postcard quotes and typed forms and things of that sort. And we did have a computer, but it was very much a simple databasing unit, and nothing like what we use today.
I never saw a computer in a bookstore till about 1986.
Yeah. And
Hard to believe now.
it is. It is. Although our mutual friend and Rogers, Dick Weatherford saw the light
Yes,
before
he
so
did.
many of us.
He
And
did. I was privileged to know him and work with him, for him, and alongside him. So
and Roger was an early adopter.
I remember
To
that.
that technology. He was one of the original interlock dealers, and there was some iteration before that, I believe.
Yeah, what? I've forgotten what
I've
it
forgotten
was.
as well. Yeah, and we had a big, robust staff back. And when I first started at the shop, Roger always had 7 or 8 people on staff.
Really?
Yeah.
Not all at the same hour of the day.
No,
but,
and we had hours that reflective of the pre-internet era. We were open, from 9 in the morning until 9 at night on most days, 10 to 10 on the weekends, and even open on Sundays. So you needed a lot of people to keep the doors open and keep the shelves full.
I remember my big shop in the early 90s, same thing, open 10 to 8. And I don't know how many employees we had, too many.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a big culture shift when the internet sort of came and became the driving force in the trade, and our hours reduced, and of course so did our staff.
Sure.
Yeah. By the time Roger sold the shop, I think we probably were running it with 3 or 4 people, where we used to have 7 or 8.
Sounds familiar, too. So Roger was, as he said, a mentor and considered you an apprentice as well, not just an employee.
Yeah. Oh, he was a father figure to me. I was a painfully shy 15-year-old when I entered the trade. He was forever pushing me to get out there, kid. And my parents were working people. They would put in very, very full days. My dad was commuting from downtown LA, and so as I hit those teenage years, I didn't have that sort of
I understand.
family to rely on or help me in my nurturing process. And not only Roger, but the manager at the time was Chris George.
Oh, yes, of course.
Who became, was the older brother I never had. Even though customer service, I'm sure, suffered when the two of us worked together, he was, and he still is to this day, my closest friend.
Oh, great. I like to hear that. Roger had a way of engaging with people and really connecting with them, and I'm glad to hear that it started out that way and continued.
Yeah.
So you worked for Roger for how long now?
From December of 1993 until we purchased the shop in October of 2006.
Now, what led to Roger deciding to pull away from the retail shop? I know for several years he operated a by appointment business, but
Yes.
Why did he decide to give up the shop?
Health issues. It
issues,
just became too much for him to manage. And his wife, Mary Ellen, was Dean of Girls at Marymount High School.
I remember that.
In Bel Air, and Roger was commuting from Bel Air all the way across the LA basin to Covina. And I just think that had such a physical and mental toll on him.
No joke, that wouldn't do anyone's health any good. So
He sometimes would leave the shop, at 2 or 3 in the afternoon, and he'd call in for the daily totals, and he'd sometimes be still on the road and just hours in traffic. And,
oof.
Poor guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you took over in 03.
06.
06, pardon me. Wow. Seems a long time ago, and yet just the other day.
It does.
Simultaneously.
Yeah.
What was it like when you signed the paper and all of a sudden it was your own business?
Well, I'm going to backtrack for just one
Okay.
second. Roger always gave us the freedom to pursue other projects and really actually, took an active interest in what we were passionate about. And in the summer of 2003, I started showing an interest in the then fledgling John Kerry presidential bid. At that point, it seemed like Howard Dean's nomination was a fait accompli. And so Roger allowed me the freedom to really get heavily involved in that campaign. And I was in very early. And during that course of that campaign, at a January meetup, I met Jen. And yeah.
Oh boy.
Very fortuitous. One of obviously the greatest things that has happened in my life.
Absolutely.
I continued on that campaign. We worked together the entire time. The romance would come much later. But I eventually rose up to where I was part of the Kerry Edwards Advance team, and so they would ship me out to Minnesota and Ohio.
No, I did not know that. I knew you were very active. And I was going to interject and say that I know, from the, 25 years I've known you, that politics has always been one of your other passions. Yeah. And still is.
Still is.
Yes.
Yeah, we're not nearly as involved as we once were, but we have many, many close friends who are either elected officials themselves now or heavily involved with elected officials.
I know you have a friend on the city council, at least I think he's still on the city council.
In Covina, Jorge Marquez.
Jorge, right.
Yeah, and Rob Charles, another close friend of mine who I met through the Kerry campaign. He has been the chief of staff for state senators and assembly persons here in California, and he was just critically important to helping the association when we were battling that autograph law, trying to get legislation to remediate that.
Poorly worded law.
Yes, yeah.
Like so many things, good intentions, bad, in practice.
Yeah.
So.
There are a few other members of our association that are also, and it's been very helpful of these, whether it's these tariffs, which seem to be such a moving target, or privacy laws, or ADA compliance, things like that. It's always helpful to have a relationship with your elected officials or have friends and
absolutely
in higher places. So
we can even see kind of similarities with politics and the book trade. Is that like your first major experiences with the Kerry campaign, and we know how that turned out.
Yeah.
There's a lot of us very disappointed, not to mention surprised. But you keep going on to the next one. Yes. And that's not unlike the book trade, where you have a lousy month and then you hit it, just keep punching.
Yep.
So you have the retail shop, and over a period of time, though, you developed this second. Tell us about that.
We purchased the shop at, right on the eve of the global economic meltdown in 2008. I remember that was the week of the Seattle Book Fair when the stock market went.
I remember.
Yeah, we all were.
Being from Seattle.
Yeah. That was a difficult weekend. So doing things as we always had was no longer an option. And it was truly a matter of survival. We'd already sort of had to adapt to the paradigm shift that was the internet. And so you need to make ends meet, pay the bills. And we really found also a new passion for dealing in archival material. Right. And Jennifer has a background as a journalist. She worked here in Southern California for the Pasadena Star News.
If I knew that, I'd forgotten it. So that's good to know.
That young lady can churn out, copy, and synthesize information just with the blink of an eye. I'm the most painful, slow, methodical writer, and Jennifer will have like 10 pages in an hour, and she loves, sitting there with a pile of letters or diaries or ephemera and just putting the puzzle together.
Yeah, that's a good word. That's a good word for it. The kind of effort and research that needs to go into something to make sense out of a jumble of leftovers of history or whatever.
We're a good pairing because I'm sort of the lean towards the OCD spectrum, and she doesn't color between the lines, and so she couldn't catalog a book and keep everything in the right order to save her life. But archival cataloging, preparing the annotations, and is a lot like writing an article for a newspaper in some ways. And so it is so suited to her strengths, and it's been an amazing thing for us. Completely changed the nature of our business.
I can imagine. Now, that part of your business, it is a separate business, though.
No, well,
not really. Just
the physical location is still to this day called the bookshop,
right?
Because you don't want to confuse the locals.
No.
But for purposes of book fairs and dealing with special collections libraries, we decided to go by Johnson Rare Books and Archives, partially because when you try to get them to remember who you are, you don't want to start with the bookshop, which is a perfectly suitable name for a little local bookstore.
Yesterday, I went to the bookshop, and then we had lunch at the restaurant. I mean, what restaurant is that? So yeah, I was wondering about that name, frankly, but
Roger inherited it.
Yeah.
So it's just always been, and
neither you nor Roger seem like the bookshop types to me.
And when Roger went out and started his own business,
Anthology
Rare Books. Yeah.
That's a good name.
That is a good
like
name.
That. Yeah. So here it is, 2020, and you still have the retail shop. You list your inventory online, I assume.
A very small amount.
Oh, small amount.
I think we only have about 4,000 books listed online. I mean, we still have a vibrant over-the-counter trade.
That's what I wanted to ask.
Sadly, it's for lack of competition. I mean, a lot of the bookstores are just no longer around. But this past September, we were fortunate enough to be able to buy our building. Which we never saw coming, and it is just a huge blessing and a huge peace of mind, and we're not going anywhere for the foreseeable future.
When John Fleming, not long before he died, the great New York bookseller, he said that the best investment he ever made in the book trade was buying his apartment in New York.
Yeah.
That the real estate was the key.
Absolutely. And we look at it, I mean, we're not intending to sell anytime soon, but that's our retirement.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Now, do you have other tenants in the building?
No.
It's
a standalone. It doesn't look like it. I mean, they're all built wall to wall.
Right, yeah. Oh, that's terrific.
Yeah.
That's great. Okay, in 2020, which is when this movie is being made, what percentage of your sales are in the shop versus your online listing?
It's probably fairly equal. I mean, the lion's share of our business now is the sort of special collections, institutional sales, and that probably is 60% or thereabouts. And I think the over-the-counter is, 10 or probably about 15%, and as is the internet, and maybe book fairs fill in the rest.
Well,
yeah,
that's still enough to. And plus, I assume you would think like I do, that having a physical presence on the street
absolutely
in most areas, not everywhere, but certainly in Covina, that's important to
we
people.
need open shops.
We do.
They're the front lines.
Yes, absolutely.
People, it's where the entry-level collectors cut their teeth.
Yeah.
And
they don't want to go upstairs in an office building.
It's intimidating.
It is.
Yeah, and just having a wide, diverse, and we're shameless generalists.
Yeah,
and
like that.
Having a big, diverse inventory, the opportunity for serendipity is high.
Absolutely.
And that's the one thing that to this day, despite all the technology, the ability to walk down through the stacks and just spot something on the shelf.
Yeah. You could see that listed on 1,000 websites and it wouldn't register, but then you see it right in front of you and say, oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that could be a total
that was definitely
game changer.
Definitely part of my education, going to shops. And I sort of caught the tail end of the Southern California, way before
Yeah.
things really started changing, back when there were like 8 stores in Whittier, and
Oh,
they
yeah.
were lined along Colorado Boulevard here in Pasadena, and most of the Adams Avenue, and of course Warren Brock's down in San Diego.
Oh, I miss them. And you remember Dirt Cable
Oh, of
here in
course, yeah,
Pasadena.
yeah.
So many long gone stores. I wish we'd had a chance to interview some of those people.
Absolutely, yeah.
But we're here now, and we're glad about that. Well, you've become president of the Antiquarian Booksellers Association of America, the premier association of our trade, the old and rare book trade. And I will just interject by saying 20 plus years ago, I predicted that you would be president. And
You could have warned me then.
I should have, but I'm glad I didn't, because here you are. And I'd like to ask you a little bit about what you see for not just the future of the association, but for the trade in general.
For the future of the association, we have a lot of the same challenges year in and year out. I mean, a lot has to do with maintaining our membership levels. I mean, it's no secret that we are, by and large, a graying organization and a profession that a lot of people get into as a second or third career.
Right.
And so the sort of longevity is difficult to maintain.
Am I correct, though, that we have not been bleeding numbers recently?
We've been sort of treading water.
Yes. Because I seem to see more applicants, and
Yes.
definitely more younger applicants than I
Yes,
used to.
it's been very, very positive lately, and we are in the midst of some outreach efforts. I think as you walk around a modern book fair now, it's obvious that this is a big tent.
Absolutely,
we're not just
it
rows
is.
of books. There's ephemera, there's photographs and prints, and all sorts of non-traditional materials, things you would never see in a book fair in the 90s.
No.
And with our new vice president, Cheryl Yeager, who before was formerly the president of the Ephemera Society, we need to reach out to these allied communities and welcome them in, and be really actively do so.
So many of us in the trade have gravitated in the direction of ephemera and
Yes.
other non-traditional things.
So during our last board meeting in Boston, I introduced or proposed a bylaws change to specifically add the word ephemera to the Code of Ethics, because there's that laundry list of materials that we deal in, and I believe it's prints and autographs and books and so forth. But ephemera wasn't in there, and ephemera has become such an important part of the trade.
It is, absolutely.
And it's important to recognize that community and make them welcome. They are absolutely welcome in the ABAA, and we would love to have them.
I've been through times with ABA when they became more restrictive than they had been. There was a purge of print dealers back in the 80s, and a lot of good people got tossed out, but that wouldn't happen now, and I don't imagine that'll happen under your watch.
No, I think synergy is the name of the game.
Yes, sir. I agree.
I mean, fine works on paper, and as long as they meet our professional and ethical standards, all are welcome.
There was a little bit of chat on our ABAA discussion line about a week ago that someone thought of the idea of perhaps changing or adjusting the name of our group to be more encompassing than just the word booksellers. Didn't offer a particular idea, but what do you think of that?
I'm not crazy about the idea.
Okay,
I think
nor am I.
Some traditions are important to
I agree.
maintain. And booksellers become one of these terms that can be defined broadly.
Very broadly, I agree with that.
Yeah. So other things, challenges facing the association. I mean, we are a very active association. We provide a lot of value to our members, but that also is associated with a number of costs in terms of staff and legal fees and other expenses. And so we are in the midst of a public relations review, and to sort of better understand how we view ourselves and how others view us. And with that information, we would like to go out and talk to other businesses and organizations about sponsorship relationships.
Yeah, interconnected things. That's good.
Yeah, because I think it would be good for our membership, and definitely would be good for our bottom line. And frankly, we're leaving money on the table.
Well, that should not be done. For years, I would hear, and a lot of us would hear, sort of churlish remarks from various people in the trade that, quote unquote, the only reason to join the ABAA was to be able to do the book fairs. Now, we know that isn't true,
Yeah.
but I would like to ask you a little bit about book fairs and the future of book fairs, and where do you see those going? There's the constant challenge of losing venues and terrible costs.
Yeah, it's
We used to have them in hotels. Hotels don't want us. We'll be in some place and all of a sudden we find out it's going to be torn down.
Yeah, there's a real push-pull here,
Yeah.
because and a number of factors. I mean, we're one of these organizations that's too big but not small enough, for a lot of these venues. I can't speak to some of the other regions as well, but here in Southern California, finding the right size space in a modern facility is.
I should also clarify here for our viewers that Brad and his wife Jen are themselves book fair promoters with a short but very successful track record behind them of sponsoring fairs in Southern California.
Yeah, fairs are vital to the ecosystem, and they're not just as sales venues, but as educational venues and marketing venues, and just
Same kind of thing as an open shop.
yeah, exactly. Although the book fairs, you have a more like concentrated attendee type of attendee,
Right.
Somebody who's really, really focused and passionate about the book trade, and we see a lot of our friends in the special collections communities come out to fairs, and the ability to have some one-on-one time with them to find out what projects they're working on, what they're collecting, that sort of networking is invaluable, and again, that element of discovery too. I mean, you walk every single aisle you walk down at a book fair, you're going to discover something you never knew existed, and that's exciting.
I've met librarians at book fairs. I never would have met them.
Yeah.
Never.
Yeah.
So I understand what you're talking about. I'm hoping from what you say that regardless of how low the sales are, that you're going to keep your retail space open
Oh, absolutely.
for a variety of reasons.
Yeah, our Covina retail space.
Absolutely.
Yeah, having that open door, open shop. Things walk in the door too.
Yeah,
That are just, we had a Black Sun Press book walk in the door earlier this year, and I just was like, how in the world did this find itself on the counter in Covina? It was the Max Ernst knife and fork book, and it was just incredible. We have a local trade. Many of them are just readers, but passionate bibliophiles, and we want to support that community as well.
Do you see, again, maybe it's my hopeful nature, but I'm aware of more younger people thinking about opening retail spaces in addition to their online and more 21st century style approach.
I've seen some. I think a lot of my generation have gone the gallery route, which is a different animal, I think.
It is. I have a friend in Portland who has Ampersand Gallery, and he started out with books, and he still has some, but it's a wider approach, which apparently does very well for him.
That's great. Yeah, you have to know what works for your market.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think probably a gallery space would work better in a big metropolitan area, whereas an open shop works, in a more suburban setting.
It's been a while since I've been in your store. Do you really sell across the board kinds of things? I mean, like down to like CDs and...
Oh no, I mean, it's always books.
Oh,
We
okay.
never do, although I guess we have some LPs now.
There you go. That's good.
We have everything from pocketbooks all the way up. And I enjoy that sort of eclectic approach.
One other question I had meant to ask you about the ABAA. Our headquarters, since founding in 1949, has been in New York City. And I'd just like to ask you to comment on that.
I had a conversation many, many years ago with the late Sam Hessel.
A great
Dr.
man.
Sam.
Oh,
yeah,
God.
Yeah. We miss him a lot.
Oh, we do.
Yeah.
Gee.
He really valued having that address in New York. I I think that probably was in a different era a very, very important thing.
I've tried to come to terms with the idea that perhaps that is from a different era, and I know there have been issues about maintaining a presence there in New York, and ultimately, is it sufficiently beneficial for our group? So
it's actually something that's on the docket here in the
Okay.
next couple of years. We come up for a lease renewal, and I think it's a conversation we're going to have. I don't necessarily think that we're going to make a change, but I think it's important to start having that conversation. You know, we need to find out what works best for our staff.
there was a time I felt the book trade was kind of migrating from being centered in the East to the West Coast, California in particular. With the internet, though, again, it's kind of just diffused, and there are very good booksellers in very out-of-the-way locations now.
Yeah.
So,
One of our fastest growing chapters right now is your very own Pacific Northwest chapter.
well, I don't consider that out of the way, but I know what you mean. But so the point being that we're not necessarily wedded for the future to having that expensive space in New York.
Yeah. It's tough too. We're a bi-coastal organization, and that 3-hour time difference can be a challenge at times.
I know it has been. Where do you see yourself in the business? I mean, you mentioned the idea that the building might be retirement for you and Jen, but that isn't coming
Oh, no,
anytime.
they're gonna have to take me out feet first.
Yeah, that's of all the people I've interviewed over the years, I don't recall anyone that said anything else other than feet first, end of the line.
I'm a lifer. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Well, you started out young, and you're still young, and you've got a long way to go. And I'm very excited you're our new president, and I know you're going to take us to great places. I'm positive of that.
You'll certainly do my best.
Well, that is good.
I appreciate you coming out of interviewer retirement to have this conversation with me when they started twisting my arm and pressing upon me that it was probably not the best thing for the president of the organization not to have been interviewed. I said I'll do it as long as Taylor is the one having the conversation with me, because you interviewed Roger, and I know you two were very close friends, and that means a lot to me.
He was a great man, and another great thing about him is that he brought you into the fold. And that may be one of the greatest things he ever did.
Well, he remains a guiding force in my life.
Yeah. No, I think about him often. I know you do too.
Yeah.
I know you do too. Well, I'm not sure how we're doing on time.
You guys want to keep going? If you want to wrap it up? You know, we got some more time on the clock.
I don't know. We could talk for days.
Yeah.
But is there anything we haven't covered?
I don't know.
The shop, the future, the past.
Future, yeah.
Didn't say anything about Casa Moreno.
Yeah, we didn't say anything about Casa Moreno. That's true. Yeah.
I'll wait till you've checked in from there 10,000 times rather than 5,000.
That's right. Yeah. It's hard to look back over this spectrum because it just seems like that it's all in such fragmented pockets. I mean, the 90s seem like some weird, I mean, I remember the Taylor Bowie catalogs and how we used to wrestle over those.
Yeah, I know.
And
how much fun they were to do.
Yeah, and I remember the, when Navy Bookmans would drop, we'd probably separate that thing and divide and conquer,
So exciting.
Yeah, and darn it, at the East Coast, got it like a day early because all the good stuff would be gone.
Or they got it, while we were still asleep, they were already awake and looking through their mail.
Through it.
Yeah, that's right.
And, of course, the early days of Interlock, I remember when we popped that inventory online for the first time, and we had like 200 orders our first week, and for things that we thought we were going to be buried with, and
the early internet days were remarkable because you'd put something online. I mean, one of my staff at my shop put stuff on eBay, dead items, and put it up. We had a little pamphlet about concrete houses. We had it like priced $15. Been there for 2 years. Nobody wanted it. Put it on eBay and went for $104.
Wow.
But that was early on when there was people were
the
still
go-go days. Yeah.
Not anymore. There's no such thing as a continuous free lunch.
Yeah. Yeah, and I actually,
I don't know. I don't want to drag you for hours. Like I said, we can sit here and talk for hours. Well, all right, I'll just wrap it up. I'll just say, Brad, it has been a pleasure and an honor, seriously, to be able to interview you. And I'm not really retired from this, but I'm taking a break. But to come back to interview you gives me great pleasure.
Well, thank you.
Thank you very much.